spent 2 days in the studio in Ventura. I had just met Dan Horn, the bass player, 12 hours before we started recording some of that music that you hear on that first record that we released. And we just, went all day long for 2 days straight. And they ended up harvesting about 5 hours of music from that to put on the set breaks, which then was pared down after it got a positive response. Rhino, the record label Rhino, decided to release it on its own, so it got pared down to like 80 minutes. And that's what you hear on Interludes for the Dead. It's all just stuff salvaged from, those 2 days.
2 day sesh, like
2 day
locked up in like a barn. Like
and
you've seen those videos of like fish going up to like these mountain, a
No,
barn in there. And they were just like, we just fucking, rocked it out for a couple days and like didn't talk to anybody. Was it one of those things?
No.
Like,
No. It was super not secluded. It was like, I don't know. Ventura is like a little beach community about 45 minutes or an hour north of LA. It's really nice and quiet. That's where Neil lives. So he knows this really rad engineer with a little recording studio. You can see like there's a picture of us sitting in the room. Like we're all in one room together, one tiny little room, sitting on the floor there together. And I think that has a lot to do with like what the music is. And you asked like, what is the essence of the music? And you can go and listen to any of the recordings and you hear it warts and all. There was no time for us to stop and listen back and to make any edits or overdubs. There was no time for that. So we literally just played something and then moved on and played something else. And we had like a list of vibes or kind of like moods that Justin Kreutzmann wanted us to give him. So we would be like, okay, this is sort of our Shakedown Street vibe, or this is our whatever,
just kind of pairing. It's like a cheese that would pair with a wine. You're like, this one fits well with this, so we'll kind of run with that.
Yeah, he's like, I want a spacey, like.
Don't talk about space and drums. That gets me a little bit triggered.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. He was like, I want something that's like The Wheel, or I want something that's like Cassidy, or I want, we had just a giant list of vibes that he wanted us to hit. So that was kind of the assignment. And a big thing for us in the studio was, what do we want it to feel like during the set break? Because it's a crazy opportunity to provide the tapestry for people to dance on and to experience during those hour-long set breaks. It's like, we've probably all been at some shows and, maybe you took a little something and it's starting to like really get pretty strong, and then set break comes along and the lights come on and you look around and everevery looks like
roaches in the light. You're like, everyone's scurrying like, shit, what do I do?
Oh my God, everybody's looking at each other and like, So we're sort of like, I remember looking at Neil and he's like, what do I want it to feel like? Just want it to be like easy and chill and feel good, just something that can
keep the vibes mellow.
Yeah, it's basically
keep it mellow.
I guess it's basically that. We're a vibe band. I say, at the more than any, we're not trying to do like we're not like
damn it,
jazz hands and all that shit, like choreographed dance moves and stuff. We're more trying to go for the big picture. Like, it's kind of become something I think about a lot. The power of consistent rhythm over an extended period of time has been shown to release chemicals in our brains.
Endorphins?
Those are the ones.
I love them.
Endorphins, serotonin, all the good shit, all the, that's like, why do you think people gravitate towards drum circles all the time? But seriously, the healing power of consistent, just kind of like everybody can get in the pocket and just sit in the pocket. I think that leaves people with like a lot more space. It's like cleaning out the cache in your brain, just like delete all that unneeded, crazy, old files, leftovers.
They call it resin. It's resin. Just clean it out.
Yeah, so, that's kind of like, that was originally, we were supposed to be this sort of feel-good, background-y music that was like, what is this music I'm hearing right now? And that, lo and behold, it turns out like, you know, people's ears were perking up, I guess, you know, at those shows. And
very much so.
So, yeah, we got to play our first show.
So was Casal like, let's take this on the road? Let's do this?
So y'all like, this shit
thing.
fucks. Like, did y'all get like a resounding, like, everybody, like, and it was an outpouring support. Like, even live, people were like, usually that's the time where I take a seat and I'm like, let's regather my thoughts. And it wasn't that. It was like, let's continue this party until, you know, Bobby wakes up kind of thing. It was kind of one of those feels. So, did y'all feel like y'all had something? Y'all like, man, I think we're on to something after you heard this broken down, not only 80-minute clips, and you mentioned, you know, like the 5 hours played, and then they were like, well, we actually have enough to go with this. Were y'all like, well, I think we kind of have something here. While we may not all be on the same page of, you know, like different projects and bands going on, were y'all like, we're on to something here? Because your band now, Cats, y'all just released a new album this past fall, and that shit fucks, man. That thing, it slays. So
thank you.
How did that kind of come to fruition that y'all like, let's start doing this together?
Well, I don't want to say that we were reluctant to take the ball and run with it, but we didn't want to feel as if we were capitalizing on like something that wasn't really intended for that. You know, we were tapped for a very specific purpose, you know, and I think, you know, we did that. We took care of that assignment, and then it sort of took on a life of its own. So then at the same time, and not feeling like we wanted to, like, you know, we didn't want to be taking advantage of anything or, like, you know, being opportunistic. It's like, well, if people really have a desire to hear this music and we love playing this music, why the hell wouldn't we do it? So, you know, I think also Rhino expressing interest. Rhino also, they're closely connected with the Dead.
That's the record label?
Yeah. They have their whole catalog and all of their archives. So that's how they then sort of... Oh, wow, thank you. That's how they then approached us and, you know, asked to release the music. And, you know, of course, like, what a great opportunity to get it out there in perpetuity, you know, and let it be played for people's parties and, you know, have access to it, whatever you want to do with it. Travel with it, clean to it, sleep to it. Sure, whatever, all that. It's
I'm
all
glad
good.
I didn't say that in the mic. Hopefully they didn't pick up on that one.
Just live your life. Like, to be able to function as a soundtrack to people's lives in any space, for me, is, you know, it's one of the greatest honors of my life. You know, it was always a dream of getting into music. It's like I've always hoped that my music could somehow affect the world in a positive way, or help people through tough times or through party times, whatever, you know. And I hope that it's doing that. I hope that it's serving its purpose in that way. And
It is. I have y'all on a couple of my Spotify playlists.
Cool.
So y'all are there.
Nice.
I don't know about the tough times, but the really positive times, y'all are definitely in place. So.
Thanks, man. I mean, you know, so I guess, yeah, it was like slightly reluctant, and we wanted to make what Neil called soul moves. You know, not take shitty, weird gigs just because they would pay well or something like that. You know, we wanted to play the gigs that, you know, felt right, and they were for the right people for the right reasons. And, you know, our first show was at Lockin in 2016, thanks to Mr. Peter Shapiro. And
shout out Petey.
Shout out Shappy. And, you know, that incredible just family of people up there in New York. And that festival Lockin down in Virginia is unreal, like unfucking believable. It's so cool. I went once, like a couple years prior to when we
They've
played.
had a star-studded like lineup
amazing.
year after year.
Their lineups are incredible, but they also have one main stage that has a rotating stage, so you don't have to like trudge around this giant property all day long or whatever. You can just kind of post up and watch incredible bands just all day, because, you know, the band plays, and then behind them on the same stage, they're setting up the next band, and then they just rotate the whole thing around, and then the band is there. Boom, it's playing.
It's just nonstop fun.
There's no break. It's just nonstop. It's incredible. And then their late nights are cool, and it's a really sweet, huge property, and it's just like, the best in
They
the
do it
business
right.
in terms of like the production and all the hospitality and everything is amazing there. They got like an incredible, glamping if you want to do that, or they got really rad campgrounds and like tons of space, and it's beautiful up there. It's just outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, and it's beautiful forests and mountains. They're amazing. Anyway, where are we?
So that was 2016.
2016. Thank you.
We just
a good year.
you guys
Good year.
you guys just put out an album though and hopped on tour with Greensky, and it's funny how a lot of our guests really have what would be the word? Relate to each other.
Yeah. And it is. It's
What's the word?
Incestual. It's because it does seem like we've had these folks, and Scotty, who was on with us earlier in the week.
My dude.
Yeah, you know him as well. You play with him as well.
For longer than any other band I've ever been in, actually.
Yeah. See, is it because y'all are both long-term Colorado folk, and y'all are like...
I've known Scotty for even longer, from Vail Valley music community. Okay. He's amazing. He's always been giving people opportunities to sing their songs and speak their minds and come and have a good time, from a...
What's the tie to Vail? You lived up there for a little while when you got back from...
Well, so when my family moved here, when I was 4 years old, they used to have a little, like, beach shack in Delaware, and when
I hear the beaches are fantastic.
they really are, man. I've had the greatest time. It was actually Rehoboth Beach, North Indian Beach, where their little place was. And so for the first few years of my life, I have memories of being at the beach, and beach still holds a really special place in my heart, even though I'm a mountain person these days. Always love going to the beach. So when they moved here, they sold that place and bought a little town home in Vail, in East Vail. So I've been going to Vail since I was 4 years old, mostly, on the weekends when I was a kid and whatever, and then started living there, around 2009, and then have been in and out of the valley between there and Denver and on tour, and, wherever the music takes me.
So let's talk about that for a second. You mentioned tour and wherever the music takes you, and that's probably the second or third time we've made that.
Fourth or fifth.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll probably play it 6 or 7 more times. But as a regular listener of our podcast, you know that we love to ask folks, best places you've visited, venues that you've hit, best foods that you've also hit. So you recently, like Lippman said, you played with Chris Robinson Brotherhood on their most recent tour. Fall tour, excuse me. And then you just did, Cats just opened for Greensky recently, so you've kind of been all over the place. You hadn't been able to hang out with us and catch a buzz here at the fantastic Stoney's Uptown Joint with great happy hours.
Yeah.
But let's dive into that. So favorite stops maybe you hit on tour?
On the CRB tour?
Yeah, let's say CRB. So you were on, for those that don't follow you on Instagram, you can follow Circles Around the Sun, and then Mark Levy's
Beats Move.
There you go.
Beats Move.
At Beats Move.
I thought I was so smart when I came up with that years ago. It's pretty good. I still like it.
That's all that matters. I still call myself the Kip Wilson, as if there's another fucking asshole out there that run around with the name Kip. So I feel you on that.
Come on, man.
Yeah. But let's go with, so you have been on the road a lot. You go wherever the music takes you. So
count it.
Where's some of the coolest places you've been that maybe our listeners probably haven't visited, especially our Colorado fans? Best places, let's start with shows. Best venues that you've played with.
All right, well then for that answer, I'm going to go to the recent Circles gigs with Greensky Bluegrass.
Okay.
Those venues were unbelievable on that run. But the one that, is probably the crown jewel of them all would be the Beacon Theater in New York City. That place, the history there is kind of second to none in our music world.
The folks that have come before you and things of that nature?
Yeah, also there's a plaque backstage that's Allman Brothers celebrating 238 sold-out shows at the Beacon Theater. I was literally, it's mind-boggling to think about that, but they would do 10-day runs sold out, at the Beacon. And that place just looks unbelievable. My grandmother was going to shows there when she was 20,